Madam Mayor, we are now live on YouTube. Will you do me a favor and check your sound on your microphone from that end? Madam Mayor, would you check your microphone and let's make sure the sound is working?
Are you ready, Madam Clerk?
We are. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
All right. We will bring this special assembly meeting to order for August 8th. Mr. Smith, will you do the land acknowledgement?
Of course, Madam Mayor.
Secretary today.
We would like to acknowledge that the city and borough of Juno is on Tlingit land and wish to honor the indigenous people of this land. For more than 10,000 years, Alaska Native people have been and continue to be integral to the well-being of our community. We are grateful to be in this place, a part of this community, and to honor the culture, traditions, and resilience of the Tlingit people. Kunishish.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Madam Clerk, will you call roll, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Bryson,
Present.
Ms. Hale,
Here.
Ms. Hughes Candies,
Here.
Mr. Smith,
Here.
Ms. Treem,
Here.
Ms. Wall,
Present.
Wallahida.
Here.
Ms. Gladishevsky's absent and Mayor Weldon.
Here.
We have a quorum present.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. With that, we will go down to agenda topics. And we apologize for this, but at our last assembly meeting, we were running out of time by our legal clock. So we skipped board reports and I skipped Ms. Hughes Candies, who had some appointments to make. So Ms. Hughes Candies.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So as you noted, the Human Resources Committee met on Monday, August 1st, and we made some recommendations for the Juno Commission on Aging. We recommend that Susan Warner be appointed to a term beginning immediately, ending December 31st, 2023.
Any objection? Seeing none, they are appointed.
For the Juno Commission on Sustainability, we recommend that Jessica Barker be appointed to a term beginning immediately, ending June 30th, 2024. And Nick Waldo be appointed to a term beginning immediately and ending June 30th, 2025.
Any objection? Seeing none, they are appointed.
That for the Aquatics Board, Tracy Morrison, Scott Griffith, and Molly McCormick be reappointed for terms beginning immediately and expiring on June 30th, 2025.
Any objection? Seeing none, they are appointed.
I also have a request for the joint Bartlett Regional Hospital and Assembly Committee that's been meeting very often on. Lance Stevens, who we appreciate his service to the hospital board as a whole and on that committee. It was relocating, and so we'd like to change the membership from Lance Stevens to Brendan Knapp. And our committee's charge expired us June 30th. So we already are a defunct committee, but I would like to request an extension, the sunset date to October 31st, 2022 to allow us to conclude our business. And if we can conclude our business prior to that, we will, but to extend it that far so we can finish things up.
So to make it clear, if you fulfill your business, you'll sunset before then.
Exactly.
All right. Any objection to that? Seeing none. Thank you. Madam Clerk, I just gotta note that we have no video showing.
And I have one more item.
Go ahead, Ms. Hughes Candies.
We have the empowered boards that we were setting dates for, and I gave you guys dates to keep open. I'd just like to confirm for the Planning Commission and Eagle Crest Board and the Systemic Racism Review Committee. The dates that we'll be meeting are the 16th of this month at 5:30 via Zoom and the 25th as a tentative as needed. also 5:30, also at Zoom.
All right, if you have a problem with those dates, please check with Ms. Hughes Candies, but they work for me. All right, anything else, Ms. Hughes Candies?
Oh, thank you.
I believe that is our business for today. Do we have to do public comments since it's a special assembly meeting? Any public want to talk about non-agenda items? Seeing none, we are adjourned.
For those of you on Zoom, we will be continuing on the same Zoom link to participate in the committee of the whole meeting, which will be immediately following in just a few moments. Madam Mayor, we are ready when you are.
You, Madam Clerk. We will bring the committee of the whole to order for August 8th. Ms. Hughes Candies, would you do the land acknowledgement, please?
Yes, thank you. We would like to acknowledge that the city and borough of Juno is on Tlingit land and wish to honor the indigenous people of this land. For more than 10,000 years, Alaska Native people have been and continue to be integral to the well-being of our community. We are grateful to be in this place, a part of this community, and to honor the culture, traditions, and resilience of the Tlingit people. Kanoshish.
Thank you, Ms. Hughes Candies. Madam Clerk, will you note the roll, please?
Roll is so noted. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
All right, any changes to the agenda? Seeing none, we will continue with this agenda. First topic, item A, dock electrification. Mr. Watt, is that coming to you?
Thank you, Mayor. Let's bring the Port Director, Mr. Yucatel, up to begin the discussion on this fairly complicated topic.
Are you starting or are we going immediately to Mr. Yucatel? Okay, thank you. Mr. Yucatel, it's all yours.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Assembly members. So in your packet, you have a memo that I put together through working with the city manager's office, basically to update the Assembly on the progress to electrify the two cruise ship docks that are owned and operated by the city and borough of Juno. There's a lot going on with the bill, the bipartisan infrastructure law that has provided $1 trillion of grant funding. And then more recently over the weekend, there's another Inflation Reduction Act that is purporting to provide another $3 billion of money for dock electrification as well. So there are these competitive grants are out there. We continue to prosecute the grants that we can apply for. But really the intent of the memo is to give staff direction on proceeding with dock electrification with your concurrence, basically immediately, and immediately requires some background that kind of the long pole in the tent is what's known as a load tap changer transformer. So part of the transformers that are required both at the existing Franklin dock as well as for the new cruise ship docks require a new sophisticated transformer. And those transformers, as we're being told, is 3 years out. So The Assembly, through the Marine Passenger Fee of 2023, has already apportioned 2.64 million with the idea that we would buy the load tap changer transformer for the Franklin dock, and that's needed before we can do the cruise ship dock electrification. So that's going forward. At least we have the money now, and really we're just looking for concurrence that this is a viable plan that the Assembly would like us to pursue. There's lots of opportunity for continue to apply for grants. There's no guarantee for grants once we apply. I know it's easy to say, well, the administration is very much in favor of dock electrification throughout the country. I can tell you, in working with an association that we're members of, the American Association of Port Authorities, which is a national membership of 80 ports throughout the country. Not everybody sees cruise passenger docks the same as freight docks, and there's a really we get disenfranchised from that program. We were able to the last go around, one of the grants that we're still applying for right now, we haven't received word if we're successful or not, but the PIDP, Port Infrastructure Development Grant, it's a relatively new grant. It's only about 3 years of grants have been issued, but we were able to get some language through our congressional delegation to allow us to apply as a passenger port grant for the FY22 year, which is that's what they're debating now. But it's unlikely that ports like us will be able to compete in future years. So there's a long story, and I guess I'll kind of sum it up here that we're ready to move forward with dock electrification. We think things are lining up very nicely between the utility company through the cruise lines, especially with the Green Corridor initiative, and what we've done to date to move forward. And we're just looking for direction from the Assembly that is the plan we would like to proceed with.
Thank you, Mr. Yucatel. Let's start with questions. Who has questions for Mr. Yucatel? Oh, quiet crowd tonight. Oh, Mr. Smith, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was just looking through the report on dock electrification. Could you remind me what the ballpark high level number was to electrify both docks?
Yeah, so we're kind of pre-inflationary. It was 25 million for both. And so the request in the memo that's in your packet is to ask for $20 million and a revenue bond to be secured in January 2023, which essentially will allow us to move forward with the purchasing of the load tap changer transformers for the city-owned docks, and then continue on with a design to do what I'm recommending is design for one dock only, design for the Alaska Steamship Wharf, which is the Marine Park dock. We just think that it makes the most sense at this point to plan for one. Let's get it built. Let's use it. Most of the vessels that we know of right now have their power connections on the starboard side. That's typically how that dock is used. We think that there'll be lessons learned after we come to full operational capability at the AS dock, and then we can continue to refine those improvements and get the cruise ship terminal dock completed at a later date.
Any follow-up, Mr. Smith? Thank you, Ms. Stream.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm not sure if this is a question for Mr. Yucatel or a different member of staff, but the revenue bonds, are those would they be for the same revenue source as the revenue bonds we already have? And if so, is that just kind of like a refinancing mechanism of how we would issue more bonds?
Mr. Watt.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll take that. And Mr. Palmer also could weigh in. So our debt right now is on the port development fee. And I think we would look at the port development fee likely again. I think there's some work for Mr. Rogers to do with figuring out the stream of payments and meeting our required reserves on the existing debt. It could become passenger fees, marine passenger fees, as opposed to port development fees. I think we would look at both options.
Any follow-up, Ms. Tran? Mr. Uchitel, did you have your hand up to answer that? Okay, just checking. While we're on revenue bonds real quickly, could you explain to us remind us and the public what the difference between a revenue bond is and general obligation bond in very simple terms?
Thank you, Mayor. General obligation bond requires a vote of the citizenry to obligate the municipality to pay back some debt. And so we most often see general obligation bonds for capital projects. For instance, you just put on the ballot 2 for the new City Hall project and the parks projects. Historically, we've done a number of general obligation bonds for school construction and renovation projects, as well as other municipal facilities. A revenue bond, slightly different, backed by a durable revenue, in this case, passenger fees. So not necessarily requiring a vote of the people. There's some subtlety in that, and in doing a revenue bond, there are a lot of choices and complexities. And when we did the debt for the 16P docks and Seawalk, we did not go out for a vote of the public. Although I would not say that that is the only way you can do a revenue bond. So kind of complicated and a lot of work to be done on a revenue bond before it becomes a reality.
All right, thank you for that. Any follow-up, Ms. Dream? I have Ms. Hale and then Ms. Hughes Candies, and I'm sorry if I missed anybody else.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Packet page 5 has, it's a page with 16B doc debt. Can somebody explain the significance of this in our packet right now?
Mr. Watt.
Thank you, Mayor. I think we thought that it was sort of a little bit of an obvious question of how much debt do we have on the waterfront and how much is remaining. So Mr. Rogers included that in the packet. It's one piece of the larger picture of cruise ship passenger fee funding. So a little bit of reminder, we have 2 local fees and we also get remitted a 3rd fee from the state. We have our local $5 marine passenger fee, $5 per passenger, $3 per passenger port development fee, and around $5 per passengers come back from the state. So 3 fees, and we think in making the decision to issue debt, the Assembly is going to want to touch on that big picture question of how much debt do we have? What's our revenue stream look like? What are the requirements of that revenue stream? So every year we have a significant portion of services that are funded out of passenger fees, and what types of other projects are on the horizon. So as we commit to debt for a big project, what other choices might have to wait a little bit is going to be part of that discussion.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you. That's helpful. So I'm hoping that if if we do go in the direction of asking for the preparation of a revenue bond, that Mr. Rogers will be able to provide us with very nifty colored graphs showing, you know, all the different revenue sources and how that's going to how that bond, in addition to the doc debt, would impact those sources. This is just tickler, I guess. I see nods. Thank you.
Errol, yes, absolutely. Mr. Rogers is looking quite good today. Walking didn't look like he was all seized up. And I'm sure he will have all sorts of good graphics on that. In terms of other things, so we are working hard at a seawalk project on the south end of the waterfront, and I think we're making some progress. So we may timely bundle that project with a dock electrification debt issuance. It's our hopes that we can make progress in the fall. We're actively working on a variety of issues at the subport, trying to shake loose the NOAA property from the federal government, actively working with Senator Sullivan's office to try and make it so that we could acquire that property. We're working with Norwegian Cruise Lines and hoping that they're going to be ready to apply for their permits. And when they do that, if they're successful, there's a remaining section of tidelands that we're going to want to connect a seawalks. There's another project in there. There's our annual operational funding. We probably need some more restrooms on the waterfront as well as a number of other big ideas.
Thank you, Mr. Watt. Ms. Hughes Candies.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I have one question that I believe is for Mr. Yucatel and the other might be for someone else. Mr. Yucatel, there's a section in here on page 4 of the packet that says one benefit is incrementally encouraging the cruise industry to transition all vessels to be capable of accepting shore power. So I don't have a good sense, and forgive me if this is something you brought to us before, but is there do you have any idea, like a percentage, or is there a significant amount of cruise vessels that aren't able to connect to shore power?
Mr. Yucatel.
Through the chair, yes, there. all the Princess ships are ready for. They were designed. They were very strategic in what they're doing with their fleet. The Holland America vessels, which are also under the umbrella of Carnival, which Princess is also under, they are actively in the process of converting all their vessels. And if you notice at the Franklin dock, there's been, typically you don't see a Holland America ship at a Franklin dock, but this year there are, and those Holland America for the first time ever have an agreement with ALP to hook up. So there's more Holland America ships that are transitioning to be able to receive shore power. Some of the other brands aren't as far along. Part of what's really driving the transition, at least on the West Coast, are the strict guidelines that California has for vessels using those ports. So does anybody, my staff or Alex, do you know what percent of the fleet that comes up for Alaska cruises, what percent are capable at this point?
I don't know our current percentage, but I do know that CLIA has committed to all ships being shore power enabled by 2037. And I know that Holland America is planning to retrofit a few of their ships this summer.
Mr. Yucatel, can you repeat what Ms. Pierce said, please, for the record?
Yeah. Alex Pierce, the tourism manager, said that CLIA is committed to having all their vessels capable of receiving shore power by 2037. So if I said half of the ships could take shore power, I wouldn't be that far off.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Follow-up?
That's super helpful. And I get that we don't have super dialed in numbers at a go. And then my other question would be while we're continuing to seek grant funding, have all of these grants been written by the same folks for us? And is that our folks in DC that we're currently contracting with, or does staff know that, or Mr. Yucatel?
Through the chair, Ms. Hughes Candice, So we drafted the first round of grants. So we've submitted a raise grant for FY21, which is unsuccessful. We've submitted a second raise grant that had more input from our lobbyists through Blank Rome. And that, again, my staff working with JCOS input, working with a JCOS recommended consultant from Fairbanks. The name escapes me right now, but they also were participated in the most recent application, as well as we've applied for a port infrastructure development grant. So right now we have two grants that are out there for dock electrification, the RAISE for FY22 and the PIDP for FY22. And again, those had the input from Blank Rome, my staff, JCOS recommended consultant, inside information or insight information.
It's always good to have inside information. So a team effort. Thank you very much, Mr. Yucatel.
Any further questions? I have one, if you would. So the replacement of the transformer with the LTC, see, look at me, I can talk this way. Will that take care of the Princess Dock, some of their issues?
Madam Mayor, yes. So again, the infrastructure that the Franklin Dock right now has got is 21 years old. So you can imagine just the technological advances in the last 2 decades. So yes, what that new transformer will do for the substation at the South Franklin Dock, it needs to be done for the city-owned docks before we can transition, but it'll also allow them easier accessibility to transfer power and decouple, and it will also allow them to be on shore power longer. So it does a couple of things.
Okay, Mrs. Treen.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. That question reminded me of something that maybe has nothing to do with this, but right before the pandemic, we were starting to talk about helping the Franklin Dock move to a floating thing. Am I right? Does this sound familiar? Does that have anything to do with these plans? I mean, if they're still pursuing that, are they working on these things together? Should we still be thinking about that?
No.
Is my question.
Mr. Watt, and I think the floating thing was a floating berth.
Thank you, Mayor. You are correct. It was a floating berth. And they were interested in pursuing that at that time. We are trying to assist in acquiring tidelands from the state, so there would not be a cross jurisdictional lease. They are not currently pursuing that project.
All right, I don't see any hands, so we're looking for motions, Ms. Hale.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that we direct staff to purchase a load tap changer transformer for use by South Franklin Dock. That we approve at a high level the project scope and schedule that is laid out in this memo from Mr. Yucatel, and that we request preparation of a revenue bond. And I ask for unanimous consent.
Thank you, Ms. Hale. Any objection? Seeing none,
Mayor?
that motion, Mr. Watt has something for us.
No, the motion is
The
good.
motion is
Is that the
passed.
motion? So we did organized a field trip in July, I think, and we had Assemblymember Treem, Assemblymember Wall, and the mayor went on the field trip. And the purpose was really as in their capacities as mayor, Docks and Harbors liaison, and JCOS liaison. And I think the purpose was to help show that this is a pretty complicated issue. And if you think about construction projects, if the cost of one of these shore power connections and other facilities is $20 million, it is a amazing number of decisions that need to be made strategically well. And our hope is that we were able to a little bit convey the complexity, because it's one on a technical thing like this, it's, the go-to is like, well, let's just stick in the extension cord. But it has really significant consequences for the power system, and is very complicated process. So to the extent you're interested, I encourage you to reach out to the three of them. And if there's more interest, we probably could do another field trip at another date. But many decisions have to get made. Mr. Shaw out there in the audience, managing a shore power project in and of itself is probably a full-time job when it's going busy. It's a tall order.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Watt. And that tour was very educational for us, because when you plug it in, there's many pieces to that plugging in. And I think it took them about an hour and a half to make all those pieces work. So, Ms. Hale.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just had two things. One, my shop is in the bottom floor of the Marine View, and I can attest to the fact that plugging is complicated because it knocked the power out to the Marine View one time last summer. I just wanted to thank Mr. Yucatil for managing not only the technical complexity here, but also the complexity of working with multiple organizations and coming up with a plan. You know this is important to the Assembly, and I really appreciate your responsiveness to the concerns that you've heard from us. So thank you very much, Mr. Yucatil.
Thank you, Ms. Hale. You always say it more eloquently than I do, but I'll just thank Mr. Yucatel, Mr. Shaw, and Mr. Etheridge for being here tonight. Thank you. Item B, police fire radio system. Who is getting that? Mr. Barr?
I believe we have Chief Mercer online. Beth, can you move him over?
Hello, Chief Mercer. You are still mute. Oh, there we go. Welcome.
Hey, good evening, Madam Chair and other committee members. Thank you for the opportunity to present the CBJ radio project overview. But before I go into it, I just want to tell a really short story. I know that you guys' time is of essence, but something that happened to me when I was working out in the field over in Sitka. I was out on general patrol, and I came across an individual with a taxi cab in a closed park. So I made contact with them and learned that one individual in the cab actually had a warrant, a $10,000 warrant. So I was out there all by myself, had two other officers on working the city at the time, but were on other calls for service. I called out to our dispatch and let them know I was out there. They provided that information to me and soon let me know that one individual had a outstanding warrant. So I pulled the individual out of the cab, and I was in the process of placing him under arrest when he decided he was going to go for a run. And he, if you guys are familiar with Sitka out by Whale Park, it goes straight down in the wooded area down towards Silver Bay. Well, he decided he's going to run straight down in the woods in the dark, away from me. And in the process, while I was chasing him, my radio on my hip got ripped off. As I was trying to let the dispatcher know exactly what was happening, I reached over and learned that my radio wasn't there. And I'll tell you, that feeling of feeling vulnerable without a radio that was ripped off my hip certainly opened my eyes. Ultimately, we went all the way down. He ended up jumping in the Silver Bay in October on a fall night, and he swam back and we placed him under arrest. While this was all going on, my dispatcher was handling me and checking on my status, and they couldn't get a hold of me. And they kept on calling out the code, and I wasn't responding. So the other two officers had to proceed code to this location. They got there and ended up not knowing what was going on, but eventually found me. So the reason I tell this story, I think it's really crucial to what we're talking about today. The CBJ radio project has been something I think is needed, and I want to go over the presentation with you. Certainly don't want to kill you by the PowerPoint, so I'll try to get through this as fast as I can. So just based off of that information, it goes without saying that our radios and our communication to our first responders is essential. They need something that works all the time. And as we go along, I'll talk about our radio study and get there. But you know, some of the, are you guys able to see the presentation?
I think the clerk is working on it right now.
Okay.
Actually, no, and I don't have the presentation. Do you have a particular staff member or somebody who is supposed to be sharing it?
Yeah, we could try to share that. My apologies.
That would be great because we do not have it.
You want to speak up?
Hi, everybody. I'm running the computer. So we have it pulled up on our computer. You can share screen. So we have the ability to share screen with you guys. We can just pull it up right now.
Dave, this is Beth. And so have you selected the share screen feature in Zoom to be able to share it?
Patty set up for us, so I'm not sure. Let me just take a look real quick here.
All right, are you guys seeing that?
There we go.
There we go.
Perfect. All right. So just to start, you know, as I've learned more and more about our radio infrastructure, the pictures on the screen here, I don't know if you've ever been up there and looked at the different locations, but this is what they look like. There's not much to them, believe it or not. I mean, you have a tower with a bunch of dishes on there, and then you usually have some sort of structure that either has a generator in it or an alternative, like a battery. It charges batteries when the system goes down. But this kind of is a view. If you want to go to the next page. So I kind of talked about, you know, the importance of communications for first responders, but I want to talk about also, you know, questions been asked as we move along in our process here. Why can't we just use cell phones? Cell phones is a means of communication, and it would be easy, and for the most part, it works throughout the borough as far as it goes. But one of the things that a cell phone doesn't do and allow for is that very communication I talked about when I was at Whale Park, where the other officers were trying to hail me, the dispatcher was trying to talk to me. It's only one way of communication through two parties, whereas a portable radio, in-car radio in the car gives you opportunity to talk to each other and pass on information that's appropriate. So cell phones, although they work great in most areas in Juno, they're just not ideal for what public safety is needed for us to go out and do our jobs on a daily basis. Also, cell phones don't record and timestamp valuable information that we may be used for evidentiary purposes or just general information. If we have to go back and do a review on exactly what transpired out in the field, we're able to pull that information up and review it, and we have that capability. And last but not least is, you know, it just helps our radio communication with the technologies better serve and have a better system and for the safety of all involved, whether it be the first responders, the dispatchers trying to relay information, to also just our job to help protect the community when we're out there. So our current system, my understanding, it was an analog system that was put in place between 2006 and 2008. And the shelf life on the system expired in 2014. Many of the components that we have to try to make the system work right now is we can't find parts. I mean, we went as far as looking on eBay to find parts to try to fix a system that's much needed for public safety and the services we provide. And the coverage is provided by 9 radio sites, and we'll get into a little bit more of that as we move along. So in 2020, we were fortunate to put in for a Homeland Security grant. Tom Matisse and Michelle Brown assisted us with that, and we're able to hire a company to go out and evaluate and analyze our current system, because a lot of times we're at a place going, what do we really need to enhance and advance our system, something that's going to be lasting for a period of time. And they did. They went out and they evaluated what we currently have. And surprisingly, I thought that out the road was a very bad area of coverage, which it is. But what I learned in the study is that there were areas in our proper core area of populations we serve where we had poor transmission and ability with our current system. So what the goal behind the radio study is to evaluate our current system and then provide some ideas and suggestions on how we can move forward to advance that and to the next generation and configuration of equipment for the CBJ, and also provide us some idea of what that would cost us to move forward and expand our ability through a digital system opposed to an analog system. And looking further down the road, CBJ currently has other departments that rely on radio transmission, like the transit center and harbors, that I think the goal would be is we would be able to add those departments to this radio structure as we move forward. Again, I just kind of wanted to show some pictures of our current sites. CBJ, although we have 9 sites, we do share some of these sites with our state partners. And the pictures here pretty much kind of show you, if you look at the picture on the far left, in the middle of January, there are many times one of our towers will go down. And because of the extreme weather, it's hard for us to get out there, and we rely on an alternate power source, usually through batteries, that gives us a window before we lose that site altogether. So not only are we are struggling with the environment of the weather that we live in, we're also struggling with our current infrastructure to keep things going so that we could relay information appropriately out in the field and not have any shortcomings when it comes to it. The picture in the middle, that's kind of like a storage bay. In there is a few generators and equipment. We've had to put garbage bags over that because that structure was leaking. Fortunately, we were able to get a little bit of funding to be able to fix that up a little bit, but that's pretty much what our system looks like. It's 14, 15 years old, and it's showing some age as far as it goes. And then the last one I'm really going to speak to is on the tower, the foundation, the footing and stuff like that holds up these towers are eroding and coming out and not making the towers as stable. So those are some of the things that we're struggling with our current infrastructure. I kind of spoke to this earlier. You know, we did the radio study and learned that in some residents around our community of only 57% radio coverage inside typical wood frame residents, and only 49% radio coverage in commercial buildings. And I know that, you know, currently the CBJ has ordinance on new buildings, and we are constantly trying to work with, especially buildings around that are going up in our community, with our fire department to ensure that they are taking these things in consideration when they're building new buildings. But there's a lot of older buildings in our community that causes a lack of transmission when first responders go inside of these buildings. And there's lack of dependability in high sites with no access and no replacement parts. We kind of talked about that, and the lack of options when it comes to encryption. I came from an agency that actually had encryption, and I'll tell you many times that was certainly nice when we were out in the field and dealing with something that is a higher risk, higher stress situation where we're trying to communicate, especially not let our communications be heard by individuals that we are actually there for. So our current system does not allow encryption, limited interoperability, no GPS in portables as far as it goes. So it really does limit us with our current system, with the analog system. So if we don't move forward with anything, the system will eventually break at some point, and we will have no means of fixing, especially CBJ sites. As I mentioned before, the Alaska Land Mobile Radio, ALMR, is in place, but in Southeast Alaska, I will tell you that we have some limitations, and that has to do with the amount of towers that they have in place, which I know that is recognized not just only in Juno, but throughout Southeast. I've spoken with other chiefs about this, and they have voiced some concern when it comes to that. However, what we have going though is that we have CBJ sites that help us at least allows us able to communicate with each other out in the field and pass on information when necessary by having these other tower sites combined with the state. The current ALMR system is not recorded or time-stamped. So hypothetically, if our system completely breaks down and we no longer have it, we're not going to have that ability to record or timestamp. You know, the circuits and the bandwidth for CCFR and JPD would not be enough for us to both be on there if we are out in a major event and trying to work together combined on something where we have CCFR trying to communicate to our comms and JPD at the same time. And I think without going into every bullet point on here, you kind of get the point when it comes to, you know, our current system and our limitations and what would happen if we didn't have, if we didn't proceed to move on and try to find something more advanced. The radio study, we hired a vendor, and they came out and they provided 3 different options for us. And for the purpose of this conversation and speaking with CCFR Chief Etheridge as well, we all agreed that option 3, coordination with the state's ALMR digital system, is the way to go. But just speaking to the 2 other ones, basically CBJ standing alone, it would just be an analog system. We wouldn't get the digital ability that is necessary for advancement when it comes to radio communications. And then the CBJ standalone digital is a number 2 option as far as it goes. A lot of money up on this board when you look at it, but when we were looking at the proposals, option 3 seems like the best way to go, where we're working with our state partners and CBJ as far as trying to move forward with a better system. So as I think I really covered this, we capitalize on existing towers with AMLR. We were able to upgrade the existing AMLR system. We also will have greater radio coverage and be able to transmit in maybe some problematic areas of the borough, including some of the buildings, and overall potential long-term cost savings, meaning that right now, as we speak, we have other CBJ departments that have their own system. So combining us together and with this one system and having the capabilities to do that, with the exception of, if we were to bring transit on board with this system, they would have to purchase their own radios, and we'll talk a little bit about, the radio aspect opposed to vehicle radios and portable radios, and then increase interoperability as far as us being able to expand that area and communicate with all of the stakeholders. I think you're all familiar, during the budget process, there was funds allocated, general fund appropriation of $500,000. We're currently looking at the temporary 1% sales tax to help provide some funding towards the balance of that. And currently, even if we were to continue to move forward, there would be some funding gaps of approximately $11 million. We are, and we will continue to see what we could do through Homeland Security grants or any other types of grants that might be able to offset some of these costs. But it's our intention to continue to look for those opportunities to help fund this project as we move forward. And with that, that is what I have to provide today. I'm open here for questions. I do have Karen Kalwara also in the room, who if you have questions that I can't answer, she certainly can step in and answer questions as well.
Thank you, Chief Mercer. Who has questions? Ms. Hale and then Ms. Treem.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you very much for this, Chief Mercer, and I appreciate your story at the beginning. It brings it home. So given that we have this shortfall of 11 million, is the project to replace the radios able to get started, go in the early stages, even knowing that we've got that shortfall now?
Thank you, Ms.
Yes,
Hale. Chief Mercer.
Through the chair, Ms. Hale, that is correct. It seems like it's just it's in motion from different directions. We are moving forward. Everything that we are thinking about as we move forward, we want it to be compatible with the proposal that we're talking about tonight, so that it will offset some of this cost to some degree. As mentioned earlier, we have Homeland Security grants that we have capitalized on, and we're, I mean, as we speak, I know Aaron is working on replacing radio consoles in the communication center that needed to be, that's going to be compatible. So that itself will offset some of the cost.
Thank you.
All right, Ms. Treem, then Ms. Hughes-Candies.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Chief Mercer, for joining us tonight. I have questions that might be for staff in this room. I'm not sure. I was kind of shocked to read that the current radio system was only designed for an 8-year lifespan. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's so expensive for 8 years. And then I did read in the slides that what we would move to might be last 15-ish years, which still seems like not a very long lifespan for a $15 million project. And I'm wondering, is that just kind of a limitation of the technology of radios? And then if that is, just kind of what we have to live with, should we think of kind of stocking away money every year to pay for 15 years from now when we have to do it again?
Thank you, Ms. Treem. I'll let Mr. Barr is reaching for the mic.
Mayor, I'll jump in first. And I think Mr. Barr will add. I mean, I'm generally horrified by technology costs every time I see them, and it doesn't matter what kind of technology. I was certainly shocked at the consultant report on the radio systems. We continue to struggle, on the software side and on the hardware side of not knowing how long vendors are going to support equipment when we buy it. So, we can guess when we buy technology how long it will last and how long it will be supported. But pretty rapidly changing industry, and companies come in and out of business and merge and make strategic decisions on which products they're going to no longer support. I think your question about our long-term funding strategy is good, and whether we should be doing more socking away of funds similar to the fleet reserve. I think we struggle with that question and we talk about it a lot. And when we did the 1% discussion, I think there was a period in that discussion where I talked about looking at IT and other costs as new kinds of infrastructure or modern infrastructure that are necessary to meet the demands of the workforce and the citizenry. So I don't know if that entirely answers your question, but that's probably a lead into some more detailed information that Mr. Barr might have.
Thank you, Mr. Watt. Mr. Barr.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Just two additional things. I'll just emphasize that we are planning on thinking about, we are starting to think about a new financing mechanism for ongoing IT related costs. It's becoming really evident that that's necessary as we work through the IT strategic plan process that we're going through right now. That should be concluded within the next month or two. And then just a little detail piece. So the chief mentioned option 3 in the Alaska Land Marine radio system. You know, the best we can do really is speculate, as Rory mentioned, on how long vendors are going to be in business and are going to be supporting these systems. But I'm cautiously optimistic that by joining in and tying in with the ALMR system, that we'll be buying ourselves a little bit more long-term support, because like us, the troopers intend to be in existence forever, and they'll need that just as much as we will, and it's hopefully a little bit of an economy of scale benefit there.
Thank you, Mr. Barr.
That's really helpful. Thank you.
And if it helps, just so you get an idea, at my other place of business, we had a security system in 5 years. It's obsolete. And we've just also had to put in a totally new phone system that we had bought 7 years ago. So it just happens that fast. I have Ms. Hughes Candies and then Ms. Hale.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for being here, Chief Mercer. I'm trying to fully understand what it means in terms of expanding to other CBJ agencies that subscriber radios are required. So could you expand on that a little bit? Or I think I'm not fully understanding if that's a phased in piece or.
Chief Mercer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through the chair, Ms. Hughes Candies. Very good question. A lot of times, like for example, for us to be compatible with our ALMR, we have to program radios for them to work. And I would suspect that if we were to bring other departments on, they would have to upgrade their radios so that they're compatible with the system, because we're moving from an analog system to a digital system. And I will tell you that we have on our reserve when we purchase portable radios, and we also purchase mobile radios. The difference between the two is a mobile radio is a radio that is in a vehicle, opposed to a portable radio is that radio that you see on the hip of a police officer or a firefighter out there. And that's what we're talking about. They would have to upgrade their radios probably in their vehicles. And if they are needed, it would need to be their portable radios as far as upgrading those to be compatible, moving away from the analog system to the digital system.
Thank you, Chief Minister. Ms. Hughes Candies.
Thank you for that. And quick follow-up, and this might be a gross oversimplification, but just so I understand it, is it correct to say that in order to have an encrypted radio, you need to be on a digital system? And if that's true, I'm just curious, is the encryption all the time? Will that take care of that? Or is that another piece you'll have to add?
Thank you, Ms. Hughes Candies. Chief Mercer.
Through the chair, Ms. Hughes Candies. My understanding is that I would assume, and I probably don't like that word, that under on an analog system, you can do a digital, or you could have encrypted as far as it goes. But digital is advanced, and that gives us ability to go even farther with our geography around here as far as it goes. And the range on which between the two is, whereas analog, you're going to be able to go out only so far, opposed to digital, it goes on a lot longer before it completely is not able to transmit. So basically, the ability, if we were encrypted, you would be able to switch between the two. You would be able to go from encrypted at certain points and go back to the regular transmission. My experiences with encryption is sometimes it works relatively good depending on where you're at, and sometimes it doesn't because of like I said, we have all the mountains and stuff around us as far as it goes. But this would at least give us ability to advance in that direction and have encryption when it's necessary. We probably would not function under encryption all the time, is my understanding, because of some of the limitations that we may have in our geography around here.
Thank you.
Ms. Hale.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Chief Mercer. That's kind of like the perfect segue to my question, which is for the population that we have a large land area and a mountainous land area. And so is that land area, the area that you need to have radio access, does that drive the cost up, or is that just a minimal part of the overall cost of a system like that, like this?
Through the chair, Ms. Hale, I believe to some degree, yes, it does increase cost simply because of mountains and where we have to position different towers to be able to feed off of during transmissions, or bounce off of, or tag or tie into it to be able to transmit. We're linear pretty much. If you go from the downtown and you start working your way out in the valley, it kind of has a little bit of a U as it goes, especially it goes back into the valley. And because of that, they have to strategically put up more towers to be able to transmit depending on where your radio is going to go to, and then transmit that communication to go to the receiver as far as it goes. So it does increase the cost because of logistically and geography what we're dealing with here in our area.
Thank you.
Any further questions, Mr. Smith?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Chief Mercer. Maybe a little early in the process, but since we're here and talking about the subject, could you talk a little bit about the department's thinking about kind of balancing with encryption, the safety of the officers as well as transparency with the public? That may not be the right word, but hopefully you kind of get where I'm going.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Chief Mercer.
Through the chair, Mr. Smith. So obviously encryption is going to be valuable when it comes to officer safety. I mean, there's times when we're out on a call that may require us to strategically and tactically approach or we're responding to. So it absolutely, that would play into our ability to offset that and put us in a better position opposed to how we currently now, where everybody could listen on the scanner and know exactly what we're doing. As far as transparency, I think I mentioned that earlier. We would still probably work on the premise that we wouldn't be on encryption all the time, because I think encryption also will have its limitations on transmission, and we will be able to make decisions off that. And I'm speaking from some experience of coming from a police department that had that where I wanted to use encryption, but had to switch back over to the regular frequency to be able to transmit what I was trying to transmit to either dispatch or other officers. So I don't think we're completely out of the woods where we would run on encryption all the time. Again, I think we talked about this earlier. Everything we do is recorded. Everything in the communication center is recorded. So when it comes to transparency, and especially if there is a request from the public on information, it's recorded. So we have the ability to capture that, regardless whether it be just on a regular frequency or encrypted mode as we move forward.
Hello. Any further questions? All right. Thank you, Chief Mercer.
Thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
With that, we will go to item C, staffing update. Mr. Watt.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to give the Assembly an update. I think there's been a lot in the news about vacancies in all kinds of agencies and difficulty hiring employees and what it kind of means to the organization. So this is a little bit of a speech about temper your enthusiasm about taking on big new projects, or maybe temper your enthusiasm about bandwidth and the ability to juggle a lot of flaming balls all at the same time. We're running probably 25, 30 job postings right now, some of them multiple positions, which is as many as any of us can remember ever having. And while, you know, the people that you normally see at Assembly meetings, we're not changing. The department directors and myself and Mr. Palmer and Mr. Barr, we're not changing, but we are grappling with a lot of those issues. We're all kind of constantly talking about what to do about shortages of staffing and how to respond and what services can we prioritize or, you know, or not do for a while. You know, we're doing things like not running transit routes because we don't have drivers. And it's just kind of a one really obvious example. Our HR department is generally swamped, as you can imagine, trying to do job postings and screen applicants and help departments hire people, and any other HR processes are slow. So HR is probably our hardest hit department. I was talking to Mr. Blydorn last week, and we were trying to, you know, when we learned about the Telephone Hill property coming a little faster and the state giving notice of eviction, Mr. Blydorn and I were talking, and he said, well, I'm working on 29 projects right now. Right. And it's kind of like, it's good and it's charming, and he's making progress on all of them. And, you know, and we just have to be mindful of what we can do. The other night we spent some time, and we'll just stick on the lands section for a little bit. We spent a little bit of time on the driveway for the Parisi family, which, you know, great topic for that family. But tonight at lands, you know, he's got two big ideas, 2 large tract sales at Peterson Hill, and trying to figure out how to position Telephone Hill property. It's, you know, we want to help people like Mr. Parisi and his family on that small bore issue. But when we do that, it takes away from big picture stuff. Mr. Schaaf's not here, but he's working on some recommendations about maybe consolidating some of his boards, and he's been doing some research about how many advisory boards a Parks and Rec department has in other places, and he'll be making some, you know, recommendations. But they currently have 43 board members and over 60 meetings a year and hundreds of hours coordinating those meetings. It's a tremendous amount of time to just keep those boards alive and well. Engineering and Public Works, they've got staffing issues, and they've got, you know, the additive issue of inflation in the construction world. So trying to manage construction projects, super tricky when you can't put your thumb on how much something is going to cost and plan for that. Community development department, we just went through the task force recommendations, which were get the permits out, right? That was the number one recommendation, focus on getting the permits out. And everybody's forgotten that a little bit. And we're sort of been on this, and I want to get some land use code amendments coming as well. So everybody's doing well, but it is challenging. And I just thought that it would be good to let you know that we're all doing the best we can, but maybe don't be too optimistic about adding new projects or too optimistic about timelines on getting some of the things we're working on done. Don't want this to come across as a complaint or a whine. It's more just a state of the city and a little bit of a reality check, and I think good to acknowledge and talk about.
Any questions for Mr. Watt? Ms. Hale.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I know that there's a nationwide labor shortage right now, and I realize that that's part of what's going on. But do you think, as we talk to our elected representatives at a higher level, for example, at the state level, do you think it would help if we encouraged the legislature, for example, to work on reinstating defined benefits? Would that help with our hiring?
Mr. Watt.
Thank you, Mayor. Perhaps a little bit of a leading question, but I can't see that it would hurt. I think the truth of the matter is, you have in the CBJ workforce employees like me, a tier 2 employee who has, over time, woke up one day and realized, oh, I should stay with this organization. It's really got a long-term benefit to achieve longevity. And with that, I turn around several decades later, I'm like, oh, I've become no small part of the institutional memory, which is very valuable to the organization. I think if you asked our newer, younger employees if defined benefits matter, they might tell you, kind of show me the money on the wage line. But over time, I really do think it makes a difference. Tier 4 employees that come in with a more portable retirement plan, we're a good employer until somebody else is a better employer. And I think retention of those employees that have been with us in that kind of, maybe they've been with us for 5 years or so, and maybe they're thinking it's time for a change. I think those are the employees that we could keep and capture for a longer period of time. It's been a while since I've talked to anyone on the Hill, but I think Senator Keel, he's worked hard on this topic, and the last advice I remember from him is that it's not the defined benefit portion that is economically difficult. It's the healthcare costs that are difficult. So I think yes, I can only see it as an asset to municipal organizations across the state who really rely on long-term stable services to be able to retain employees for long periods of time and kind of fight turnover. So yes, I think it would be helpful.
Ms. Tree. Oh, Ms.
Paul was
Wall.
first.
Okay, sorry, Ms. Wall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just thanks for this update. It's good to be reminded of what's going on. I was curious about the clerk's office. I know there was new positions that we had put in the budget. How is that going?
Mr. Barr.
Thank you, Mayor. It's going. We had a new admin assistant start today, who's working in the clerk's office. That's not that wasn't one of the new positions. I believe that was a replacement of someone who we lost internally. So not a bad loss, but lost to a different department. And we are making progress. I believe we have the new deputy, second deputy position posted right now. I don't think it is closed yet.
It closed today at 4:30.
Closed today at 4:30. So we're making progress.
Ms. Trinity, do you have a question or were you just pointing at Ms. Wall for me?
I don't really have a question. I just want to say, consider my expectations tempered. Well, then that was going to lead me into, please come remind us when we start chasing squirrels. I think we'll need the reminder, but I just wanted to say thank you to all of you in this room, but everybody who works at CBJ, because everybody is wonderful. And I appreciate that everybody is also having to do more than 1.0 jobs these days. So just thank you. And I made a kind of snarky comment on, not snarky, but funny comment on Monday that I was tempted to quit the assembly and come work for CBJ. And I mean it because I just see the amazing culture that is here. And I wish I could work in a place like CBJ.
We couldn't do a higher ad without that. Thank you. Anything further? All right, seeing nothing, we are adjourned.